He looked like someone I'd never met. But something in me recognized him before I even opened the door. I don't get visitors. That's not said with sadness. Just fact. The mailbox rusts a little more each year. The hedges along the east fence grow wild with lavender and bramble. I keep the porch swept, but mostly out of ritual, not expectation. My name is Marianne. I'm 51. I live at the edge of town in a house that backs against a thicket of wind-bent trees and weather-smoothed rock. The kind of place that doesn't show up on delivery apps or holiday maps or memory. It was once the house of laughter, of light and flame and noise. My husband used to play the piano here, badly but with gusto, and I painted in the mornings with the windows open. We were the kind of couple who left half-drunk tea mugs all over the place and never knew whose coat was hanging where. But he's been gone 4 years now. A heart stops in a second, but the silence that follows has no clock. And you learn slowly to make tea for one, to eat standing up, to draw curtains by instinct before the sky even asks you to. You learn to occupy the house gently, as though it might bruise. It had rained all afternoon. The kind of rain that doesn't weep or shout, just presses. Heavy, sure, constant. By dusk, the gravel path out front was thick with mud and slick leaf rot. I hadn't expected anyone. Certainly not in that weather. But then I heard it. The knock. Not hurried. Not frantic. 3 times. Deliberate. Like someone who already knew I was listening. I paused halfway to the back room, my hand still resting on the corner wall. I waited. Sometimes storms bring confusion, an animal lost from the road, a branch scraping wrong. But the knock came again. Steady. I moved to the window beside the door and pulled the curtain back just enough. He stood under the small porch light, drenched, still, unmoving. A dark coat clung to him, weighted with water. His hair flattened against his forehead. He didn't look up at first. Just waited, one hand in his pocket, the other at his side. Not a posture of desperation, not fear, just pause. I didn't feel alarm. That's what surprised me. No tightening, no panic. I felt recognition, not of the face, but of the moment, like a page I'd read before, now returning in a different book. I opened the door slowly. Rain mist swirled between us. He raised his head, looked at me like he was trying to play something. Sorry, he said, his voice low, clear. I didn't mean to startle you. You didn't. He gave a small smile, barely there. I used to live next door. A long time ago. I was driving through. Roads flooded a few miles back. Phone died. I studied him. Late 30s, maybe. Or just a young face marked by too many winters. I remembered the porch light, he added. You always kept it on. I glanced past him into the rain. He could be lying. But he wasn't. I knew that with the same certainty you know when tea's about to boil or a storm's about to shift. You can dry off here, I heard myself say. Just for a moment. He stepped in like someone taught to be careful. Shook the water from his coat, just enough not to splatter the rug. Removed his shoes. Thank you, he said softly. I nodded. Sit. If you'd like. He chose the armchair. The one by the bookshelf. The one no one had sat in for over a year. I watched his eyes as they moved around the room. He didn't stare. He scanned. Slowly, thoughtfully. This smells like cedar and honey, he said. Like my grandmother's house. I didn't answer. Somewhere between opening the door and offering the seat, I'd lit a candle. I didn't remember doing it, but it was there, burning slow on the table between us. The shadows it cast moved like they'd been waiting. Your name? I asked, once the silence stretched too long to be polite. Evan. He didn't offer a last name. I didn't press. I told him mine. He repeated it like it mattered. The storm thickened. You could hear the wind rising in the chimney, curling through the unseen parts of the house. I poured tea. Automatically. Muscle memory more than thought. Still warm, I said, placing a cup on the table near him. Thank you. He held it with both hands, like someone taught to receive things without greed. You said you used to live next door? He nodded. Years ago. My dad bought that old blue house. We stayed about 6 months, then moved. I was 13. I remember a boy on a red bike. He looked up, smiled. That was me. The rain softened for a moment, then returned with a vengeance. I thought about this house a lot, he said, his eyes on the floor. It was always the warm one. Lights in the windows. Music sometimes. My husband played piano. Not well. I laughed. For the first time in what felt like weeks. No, I said. Not well. Time blurred. The candle burned lower. The tea cooled. He didn't ask anything inappropriate. Didn't pry. He just sat. And listened. And told me things. How his mother left when he was 9. How his father drank after. How he'd spent most of his 20s moving town to town, trying to outrun something that always knew his name. I used to think houses had memory, he said, eyes fixed on the dancing flame. Like they carried the echo of who we were when we passed through. Maybe they do. I don't know why I said that. Except maybe I did. Because this house had been silent for 4 years. And tonight it listened. He asked about the paintings. 3 were hung in the hallway. Yours? He asked. I nodded. They're beautiful. I stopped years ago. He turned to me. Why? I paused. I don't know. That was a lie. I stopped because grief changed the colors. Because every brushstroke reminded me of a voice I couldn't hear anymore. But I didn't want to say that. Not yet. It was nearly midnight when I stood. You should go. He didn't argue. But he didn't rise. Just looked at me. Not pleading. Not hoping. Just steady. Like a question without punctuation. And I stepped forward. Just 1 step. But it was everything. Enough to feel the heat still clinging to his sleeves. Enough to smell rain and cedar and the faint trace of soap. Enough to feel the space between us hum. I didn't touch him. But I didn't need to. The space touched us both. He stood slowly. Picked up his coat. Shoes in one hand. He didn't thank me again. Didn't look back. I closed the door after him. Locked it. And leaned against the wood like something inside me had been knocked loose. My hands were shaking. Not from fear. From something older. Something closer to a name I hadn't spoken aloud in years. The candle burned to the bottom. The room quieted. But it didn't feel still anymore. It felt awake. He looked like a stranger. But something in me knew better. And now, when I walk through this house, my footsteps echo differently. Because I'm not the same. And neither is the silence. The first time I let him in because of the storm. The second time, because of something I couldn't explain, not even to myself. I didn't expect to see him again. After he left, I told myself it was just weather. Circumstance. A quiet kindness in the middle of a loud night. But 2 days later, when I stepped onto the porch to bring in the morning paper, there he was. Not standing. Not waiting. Just walking down the road. Hands in his coat pockets. Head tilted like he was listening to something in the trees. He didn't see me right away. But when he did, he paused. Raised a hand in greeting, not eager, not uncertain. I nodded back, then stepped inside. My heart beat too loudly for such a quiet morning. That afternoon, I found myself cleaning the armchair he sat in. Not because it was dirty, but because the fabric still held the shape of someone. The tea stain on the saucer was faint. I didn't wipe it. I let it stay. 2 more days passed. The air shifted. Warmer. The kind of weather that makes curtains billow even when the windows are closed. I spent the morning in the garden, pruning dead branches, ignoring the ache in my knees. By noon, I was inside, painting. Just painting. No intention. No plan. Brush to canvas. One line, then another. Blue over white. A thin edge of rust. I hadn't realized how long it had been until I stood up and my legs protested. My hands were covered in color. It felt like breathing. The next knock didn't surprise me. Not this time. It was dusk again. The light turning gold at the edges. I didn't check the window. I just opened the door. And he was there. Not soaked this time. Not windblown. Just there. Same coat. Same quiet. But his eyes held something softer now. "Hi," he said. "Hi." He didn't offer a reason. He didn't need to. "You can come in," I said. He stepped over the threshold slowly, as if he remembered how it felt. Shoes off. Coat hung on the same hook. He moved toward the armchair like he'd never left it. I didn't stop him. I made tea again. But this time I brought honey. And a second candle. The air felt heavier. Not uncomfortable. Just charged. Like something had been left unsaid and now filled the room in our silence. He looked at the fresh canvas leaning against the wall. "You painted." I nodded. His voice dropped just slightly. "Why now?" I paused. "I don't know," I said. Another lie. I knew exactly why. Because something in me had been unlocked that night. Not broken. Not taken. Just opened. And now I was trying to see what else lived behind that door. We spoke more easily this time. About ordinary things. The taste of early summer berries. The way his father used to fix things with the wrong tools. How I once thought about moving to the coast and never told anyone. "You never told him?" he asked. He meant my husband. "No," I said. "Why not?" "Because I wanted to keep it." "Keep what?" "The part of me that still dreamed." He looked down at his tea, then back up. "It's still there." I didn't answer, but my throat tightened. Because some truths don't need to be said to be believed. The rain started again. Light this time. We sat in silence, listening to it touch the windows. And then he said something I didn't expect. "I used to watch this house from my bedroom window." I turned. "What do you mean?" "Back then, when I was 13, it always looked full. Like something good lived here." "It did." He nodded. "I used to wish I could come inside. Just once. You were just a boy. Boys feel things, too." I didn't know what to say to that. So I said nothing. The clock ticked. The candle bent lower. The tea cooled. And still, neither of us moved. I looked at the space between us. Fewer inches now than last time. And none of them felt empty. "You should go," I said eventually. My voice was quiet. Not sharp. Like someone closing a book gently, not slamming it shut. He stood. But this time, I did too. We faced each other. The hallway light flickered slightly from the wind outside. He looked at me. Not like a man looks at a woman he wants to possess. Not like a stranger trying to earn trust. But like someone asking, "Do you feel this too?" I didn't speak. But I didn't move back. And in that silence, we said everything. He left without touching me. Again. But this time, the door stayed open a moment longer. Just enough to let the air inside. That night, I painted until my fingers cramped. The colors were brighter. Not bold. Just alive. Like they remembered how to move. When I went to bed, the sheets were cold. But I didn't feel alone. I felt accompanied. Not by him. But by the version of me that had said, "You can come in." And meant it. He never asked for anything. But something in me kept offering. Not with words. With stillness. With listening. With staying just long enough to matter. The next week passed like a tide. Not a storm. Not a wave. Just a steady, quiet pull. I thought about him less with my mind and more with my hands. Folding towels, peeling fruit, brushing the porch rail. He hadn't promised to come back. But I set out 2 mugs each morning anyway, and lit the candle before dusk. Routine, I told myself. Nothing more. He returned on a Tuesday. No rain this time. No excuse. Just a knock, lighter than the first, like a secret knocking to see if it's still allowed in. I opened the door without hesitation. He smiled, not sheepish, not certain. Just there. Like someone who'd been standing just outside my thoughts all day, waiting for them to settle. He brought lemon bread. Still warm. I passed a bakery, he said, handing me the paper bag. It reminded me of the kind my grandmother used to make. It smells like morning, I said. He laughed softly. It's always smelled like something else to me. Like apology. We stood there a little too long. Then he stepped inside. Shoes off. Same hook. The house didn't flinch. That evening unfolded differently. No rush to fill the silence. No need to explain where he'd been or why he came. He sat in the chair, but more loosely now. Like he trusted it to hold him. I poured tea and didn't ask if he wanted some. I already knew. He told me about his father. Not the usual stories, not the ones you can polish into something meaningful. The real ones. How he used to wake at 3 a.m. and rearrange the kitchen drawers. How silence in their house could be louder than shouting. How he once ran away and no one noticed until dinner. I listened without blinking, not because I was shocked, but because I recognized something. That kind of quiet lives in walls, in the spaces between people who never learned how to ask for what they needed. You ever think silence can be inherited? He asked. Absolutely, I said. And grief. Especially that. He looked at me then. Not directly. Just enough to feel it. I thought I forgot what it felt like to be noticed, he said. I didn't answer, because I hadn't realized how much I needed to hear that too. I told him about the painting I hid in the attic. Why hide it? It was the last thing I made before my husband died. And after. Everything I touched felt dishonest. He said nothing for a long time. Then finally, maybe it wasn't dishonesty. Maybe it was just too honest for who you were trying to be. The truth of it sat between us like smoke. Later, he stood in the hallway, studying the small landscape near the stairs. You don't sign your work. No. Why not? I don't know where to put my name anymore. He turned. Maybe not on the corner. Maybe in the color. I smiled at that. Because maybe that was all I'd ever wanted someone to see. That night, he didn't stay late. He stood slowly, took his coat. At the door, he hesitated, like he was about to say something. But instead, he just said, "Thank you for letting me keep coming back." I nodded. You don't need to thank me. He didn't argue. But when he left, the air felt heavier. Not in a way that suffocated, just in a way that made me want to breathe deeper. After he was gone, I stood at the window. The garden had grown wild. I didn't mind. It looked like something coming back to itself. The next day, I went to the attic. It took a while to find the canvas. When I did, I carried it down slowly, not reverently, but with care. I set it by the window. Let the light find it. And just for a moment, I saw it the way I used to. Not as a wound, but as a threshold. He came again 3 days later. We didn't talk about art or grief. We sat on the porch instead. The wind moved around us like it knew our names. He said he'd been thinking about leaving town. I didn't ask why. He said it softly, like a question. I didn't answer right away, because something in me had started to ache. Not because I needed him to stay, but because I had just begun to recognize the version of me he kept looking at. And I didn't want to lose her yet. It was nearly dark when he stood. I should go. But he didn't move. Just looked at me. His voice barely above a whisper. You're the first place that's felt safe in years. My breath caught. Not because of the words, but because I knew exactly what he meant. After he left, I didn't turn on any lights. I let the house stay dim, soft, still, but not empty. Not anymore. He didn't reach for me, didn't ask, but everything in him stayed, like an invitation with no pressure, no conditions. And I stepped toward it, toward him, toward myself. He didn't come for 2 weeks. No call, no knock, no shadow. I didn't panic. I waited, yes, but not like before. I kept the mug beside mine, even if it stayed empty. Lit the candle before dusk. Moved through the house the same way you walk barefoot across an old rug you've only just begun to notice again. In the absence of his footsteps, I listened to my own. To the way I moved from kitchen to hallway. To how long I stood in front of the window before turning away. To the sound of the paintbrush lifting from the canvas. And the silence it left behind. Then, just when I'd started to believe the quiet had won again, there he was. Not at the door, but by the garden. He was crouched beside the rosemary bush, running his hand gently through its needles like someone greeting an old friend. I stood behind the screen door for a moment before opening it. "Careful," I said softly. "It scratches." He looked up, smiled. I like that about it. He stood slowly, brushed his palms together. "You didn't come," I said. "I didn't know if I should. And now? I still don't." I nodded, and let the silence fill the space between us. It wasn't awkward. It was full. Like standing at the edge of a body of water that's always been there, waiting for the courage to step in. We sat on the porch. He didn't bring lemon bread this time. He brought nothing. But it felt like more than any other visit, because we both knew it might be the last. And still we stayed. He told me he'd accepted a job offer. Out west. 2 states over. Something steady. Something clean. I told myself I needed to stop circling, he said. "And have you? Maybe? And this?" He looked at me. This was the only place I didn't have to pretend I wasn't lost. I didn't reply. Because there was nothing to argue with. And because part of me had been that place, too, a soft waiting porch in someone else's storm. The sky turned bruised and blue. I stood first. The tea had gone cold again. "You should go," I said. I said it kindly. Not like a door closing, but like a hand resting on the edge of something unfinished. He nodded, but he didn't rise. He just looked at me. Not with question, not with want, but with the ache of being understood, of being held in someone's gaze without being consumed by it. I stood there for a long moment. Then I stepped forward. 1 step. That was all. No reaching. No touching. Just closing the space. Enough to feel the rain that still clung to the cuff of his sleeve. Enough to smell his skin, soap and cedar and something like wind. Enough to remind my body what warmth felt like before the world turned dim. He looked up at me. His eyes didn't move. His hands didn't reach. But I felt everything shift. The porch. The house. The way my name settled in his silence. Then he stood. And the moment broke like something soft being folded, not torn. "I won't forget you," he said. "I know." He stepped down the porch steps. Slowly. Didn't look back. Didn't need to. I closed the door. Not quickly. Not quietly. Just completely. Then leaned my forehead against it. And breathed. My hands shook. Not from fear. Not from sadness. But from the knowing that what I let in wasn't just him. It was something older. Something with my name on it long before he ever spoke it. That night, I didn't light the candle. I let the darkness come on its own. I didn't paint. I didn't make tea. I just sat and felt the echo of him in the room, not like a ghost, but like a hum. A presence that had unlocked something and left it open. The next day, I painted again. But not with urgency. With steadiness. With breath. And for the first time in years, I signed it. Not in the corner, but hidden in the color. I still live alone. The curtains still close before nightfall. The bread still hardens if I forget it on the counter. But now, when I walk through this house, I don't just hear silence. I hear memory. I hear music no one else hears. And I feel the presence of someone who never asked me to become anything except more myself. He looked like a stranger. But he wasn't. He was a door. And I walked through.